we diagnosed a fundamental change in the nature of capitalism, and we found out that capitalism is actually not producing homogeneous structures as Marx believed, but heterogeneous, and we could see it now with the advent of cognitive capitalism in the Western world, and the different. We have the emergence of neoclassical capitalism in newly industrialized countries like China. And the whole world is integrated into a global economic system. Towards this integration, we can point out the two different types of resistances. One is ethnocultural resistance, which is usually represented as a kind of regression into pre-modern types of communities, but is actually a quite recent development meant to resist this global system. And the other is various alternative politics, which are mostly marginalized and they are unable to achieve a voice on the global scene. So from the what we diagnosed is that the world system has changed from the Fordism to post-Fordism. Fordism we could define as a classical mass product material capitalism, and we also concluded that the socialist state was the variation of the basic model of the Fordist state, which was founded in peripheric parts of the world. It was the poor variant of the basic capitalist state. So the cognitive capitalism is characterized by the new process of organization. The social relations now are themselves forces of production. What that means? It means that we are now living in a much more flexible world, the world which is characterized, the relations are not, no long-term planning is possible, the relations are fluid, the work is done by the projects, there is much less security, and the general social welfare state is under attack. And the social rights like free health education, or like free health system and free education is coming under a big threat. It concerns mostly, it's very important because it concerns the young people like us who are now entering the market of labor, and will be our product is actually the knowledge which we will be asked to transmit, to work, to produce. And we can find analogy between the current situation and the first advance of capitalism, but there are also important differences. So, what else I could point out? The class compromise, which was reached after the World War II, tended to collapse with the beginning of the 70s, and the crucial point was the unsuccessful May Revolution in France in '68. This revolution was characterized by attack on three dominant institutions of the Western society. This is the school as the place where we exchange symbolic capital, the knowledge, the family, which in Levi-Strauss terms could be defined as an institution which is meant to exchange the women, and the third is the factory, which is the place which serves as a ground for exchange of commodities. The revolution failed. We can't point out the single reason. Maybe because the masses of the population were still in a petit bourgeois moral system, or that it was impossible. It was impossible for writers to articulate their demands in a clear political manner, which is the problem of all spontaneous movements. They have these organizational problems. Once they have a strict organization, they don't have this spontaneity, and also they tend to get bureaucratical. But if they have spontaneity, they can't affect the situation. So it's a kind of dead end. And so we are living in uncertain times, and history is very open. It can go either way. We could have some bizarre dystopias, like if the capital starts to attack all the continues to attack all the other systems of life. We could even find that maybe sleep is going to be taxed one day. And the other option is that we will be able to preserve some kind of a social state, and there are some important advantages of the post-socialist societies which could be used to make the life better, like the general high-level education of general population and some egalitarian ideology which is still present in people in these countries. And that would be all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerko Bakotin. Now, Christian Hristov, the second speaker.
Good evening. As a participant at the workshop Social Rights in the Globalizing Era, I just want to point out a little aspect that my colleague Jerko didn't mention. Globalization is, of course, a really contradictory process. So when talking about social rights, I personally think that it's a good option to look at the formal and informal aspect of this, let's say, phenomenon. For instance, as example, I'll take the European Social Charter, which tries to point out questions about the housing, the healthcare, the education, the employment, the legal and social protection, the movement of persons, and the non-discrimination legislation. But as every formal document and every formal regulation by the globalized multinational political structures as, let's say, European Union and United Nations, at local level, the different nation states can regulate the social rights in a different contextualized way. So we shouldn't underestimate the informal aspects of social rights, which is in fact their real implication in each nation state. So by saying this, I just want to point out that mediators as NGOs and the medias play a key role in the modern civil societies. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian Hristov. The last speaker from this group is Ivan Miroshnichenko.
First of all, good evening. I'd like to present myself. I am representative from Ukraine, from the Forum of Young Ukrainian Leaders. I'm first year student of Sumy National Agrarian University.